Welcome to the Life You Love podcast.
We're your hosts, Grace Lemire
and Erin Convertini.
This podcast is for the dreamers and the doers.
For the women who want to create a life they genuinely love waking up to.
We believe that life's short, so let's build one we love.
One core mission that we have here at The Life You Love is to inspire women to believe that they're capable of more, but then to actually take the steps necessary to achieve more. We've always been pretty ambitious people, and with that have always balanced multiple things, whether that be multiple jobs while in college, a corporate job with a side hustle or two, or now being full-time entrepreneurs, balancing multiple gigs and projects. We're constantly getting asked how we stay productive, disciplined, and ultimately managing our time as girls that want to do it all. So in this episode, we're giving some of our best tips for ways that you can get more done regardless of what you're trying to accomplish.
We really do manage a lot. Honestly, I always post on my Instagram stories like my to-do list for the day. At the beginning, I'll be like, okay, here's everything I need to do today and like show my progress on it. And one of the questions I get asked literally all the times, people will message me and they'll be like, how do you actually get through everything on this to-do list? Like, how do you actually manage getting it all done? And I feel like, we're kind of used to it, I guess, to an extent, like having so many things going on. And I am someone who enjoys having multiple things going on. But I think when you actually like take a step back and you like, I really think about it, I'm like, oh shoot, like I really do get a lot done. And I do have a lot of like tips and tricks and strategies and things that I feel like help me do that. But it becomes like second nature, but it really is useful to share. So I'm excited that we're like diving into it today.
Yeah, this is one of my favorite topics to talk about too. And I do think it does become second nature and you don't really think about the fact that you're balancing so many things. I know for me, I've always really since college, I would say, is when I started to kind of become like the person that has a million different things going on. I posted a TikTok one time about all of the different jobs that I've had. And I know you're the same way. It was like 17 different jobs. And I'm 25 and I'm fully self-employed now. So I haven't been fully employed since I was like 23, I think. So to have 17 jobs prior to that was like kind of a lot. So yeah, like being in college and then having internships and jobs and babysittings and all of the things. But then now even being self-employed, but still having a bunch of different projects and clients and things that you're kind of like your brain, it's easy to get to the point where your brain is being pulled in a lot of different directions. So that can be overwhelming for a lot of people. But I think we've really kind of like, I don't want to say mastered it, but like we've gotten to a point where we can manage it and we don't feel like we need to pull things off of our plate and take away projects and take away things that we're really excited about because of the fact that we aren't able to manage our time. We are so excited to announce that the Life You Love community is going international. In February of 2025, we are hosting an international group trip and retreat to Colombia with EF Ultimate Break. If you've never traveled with EF Ultimate Break before or have never taken a group trip before, think 1 week surrounded by 20 to 40 like-minded women that can truly become your best friends. I've taken countless group trips in my life and it's the perfect way to travel more even if you don't have anyone to travel with or if planning the trips and figuring out the logistics of the trip stresses you out. In Colombia, we're having a week of sightseeing, beaches, boats, and of course building a community of like-minded women, which we could not be more excited about. If you want to see the full trip itinerary, learn more, or book the trip, we'll put the link in the show notes. Now let's get back to the episode.
Yeah, I've always been someone who I genuinely enjoy having a lot of things on my plate. Like I always talk about how this one semester in college, I had 3 jobs, like part-time jobs, 3 internships, my full-time classes, and I was studying for the LSAT or the law school admissions test at the same time. And it's funny because in the moment I was like so busy, like every waking moment I was doing something productive, but I actually really enjoyed that. Like I loved it didn't really feel like a hustle, but so it kind of is funny because I didn't expect to be an entrepreneur. Like I didn't necessarily see that for myself. It's funny because I knew the kind of work I wanted to do, but I didn't know it was like called entrepreneurship. But now that I do it, I'm like, oh, that makes so much sense because you really are juggling a lot of things. And like for me, I'm a full-time freelancer, so I have multiple clients. I have like, responding to all of them, whatever. I'm like taking all of like the inbounds, like when I get like potential clients that reach out to me and want to work with me. And then I do content creation as well. And then also the podcast. And I will say I do have an assistant who started when we're filming this. She started like a few weeks ago or like a month ago at this point. But getting things like outsourced to that assistant to like help me with the admin stuff, I still have to like figure out what I need to outsource, explain how to do those tasks, like training her and things like that. So it's obviously it helps, but like there's still a million things. And that's on top of like me trying to just like be active every day, keep my apartment clean, be a good friend, keep up with my family. Like there's so many things that are going on that like there is definitely like a lot on my plate, like a lot of moving parts.
Yeah. And I will say too that I think some people just operate better when they have a million
Yeah.
things going on. And I'm totally one of those people.
Me
I
too.
remember my first, and we're all balancing a lot. Like if you're listening to this being like, I don't know if this applies to, like, no, we all are balancing a lot. Like we all have a lot on our plate that we might not even realize, and like things that are stressing you out. But I remember my first semester of college, I went to RMU. I'm in my dorm. I had, because like they make your schedule for semester, so you don't get to
Oh.
pick. Yeah, like at our school we didn't get to pick how, and I
Interesting.
had 14 credits. Like I didn't even have 15 whole credits. So I had like not even a full course load. I didn't have a part-time job at that time, and I didn't join my sorority yet. So I had literally nothing going on. And that semester was probably like the worst, like the kind of like pit of my life, I would say. Like I was napping for 3 hours in the middle of the day every day. I wasn't working out. I wasn't eating healthy. I was like procrastinating a lot of my homework. Like I'm definitely the person when I do have a lot going on, I find that I'm more productive and I can balance it more effectively than when I just really don't feel like anything is kind of like occupying all of my brain capacity and my brain energy.
Yeah, I'm 100% the exact same way. I enjoy having multiple things because I think it also forces me like to get things done because some days when I don't have as much to do, I find myself almost procrastinating
Yeah.
the tasks in order to fill the time because I don't like, which I know this is probably an issue and I should probably talk to my therapist about it, but I don't like having a ton of downtime. I genuinely enjoy doing things. And I think part of that is that I want to make sure I use my 20s to really build a life that I love and like so then when I'm in my 30s I can like enjoy like my kids and my husband and just like you know what I mean, just kind of like live a little bit of a slower life, and I just genuinely enjoy that. But I do like having a lot to do. Like I just genuinely enjoy it. And I think right now too, a lot of the work I'm doing is stuff I enjoy. So if I'm like, oh, I want to work on this on the weekend, or I want to like, you know, like I just launched a course, like launching a course, setting up the funnel, like all those things, it's fun to me and I like to see like what I can do with it. So then naturally that leads to like a longer to-do list and stuff. But
Yeah, no, definitely. I am totally in the same boat where like a lot of my side hustles came from things that I originally didn't realize could be side hustles or couldn't be monetizable. And I did really start them as like hobbies. And this is like kind of a conversation for another time, but like kind of starting them in the mindset of like, well, I need something to occupy my brain and I need kind of like a hobby. And I started, and now all of a sudden, like those have turned into more like business ventures for me, which is like totally great. But I think a lot of people are afraid to get to that point because they're afraid of putting too much on their plate. They're like, well, I have a full-time job. So like, I don't want to start this thing because I don't think I'm going to be able to manage it all. And like, I already don't have enough time in the day to like do my one thing. So I don't want to like get started on a side hustle because they just like their brain automatically goes to like, I'm not going to have enough time to do it, or I'm going to be stressed out. I'm going, and you kind of like self sabotage the process almost before you even get started. And that's kind of what prompted us to make this episode today and talk about like how we have been able to effectively do it, how we kind of like avoid that feeling of like not having too much time or your brain being pulled in multiple directions and all of that.
I think it makes a difference when the things that you're doing too are things that genuinely excite you or things that bring you joy, things you actually want to do. Like if your day is full of stuff that you're kind of forcing yourself to do or things that don't bring you energy, like even for example, like some work tasks that I have don't bring me energy. You know what I mean? I'm like, yay, bookkeeping. Like, I don't want to do that. But there are some things that I do that genuinely I feel like restore my energy because I like doing them. So then it makes it easier to like get those things done. Or like
Yeah.
I like to like exercise after work and like that brings me joy and peace and like helps me relax and whatever. So it doesn't feel like a chore or a task on the list. And because that's something I look forward to. I think it makes it easier to manage when you like the stuff.
100%. But I will say too, like on the like being genuinely excited about taking on more. And like, I think we're coming at this conversation a lot from like things like with the goal of generating income from it. Like you want to start a side hustle, you want to start a business, like all of that's kind of like the angle that we're coming at a lot of this conversation with. And I think for a lot of people, they're like, okay, well, I'm not excited about like, let's say you want to start a side hustle like Instacart or Rover or like something that you're really just trading your time for money from like a side hustle capacity. It can be really hard to think about that as like, well, I'm not excited about that. I'm not excited to go like deliver someone's groceries. I think like reshaping your mindset around that, and instead of being genuinely excited about the project or the side hustle being excited about the outcome. Like there has to be something that you're excited about in order to motivate you to do more and motivate you to spend your ultimately your free time doing that thing. I think we're at a point now where, like, I know for me, when we're sitting here talking about like all of the things that we're balancing, like I'm a creator, the podcast, I do some like freelance UGC type stuff. And then I also work with a startup. I'm not full time with them anymore, but I do a lot of work on like content strategy, growth, customer experience, that kind of lens. And I'm at a point right now, it's such a privileged point to be, where I'm only taking on additional opportunities when they truly excite me, from like a, this is going to challenge me, this is like really going to fill my cup and like make me feel fulfilled. So I like am at such a good place where I can be able to do that, but a lot of people might not be able to. So kind of reminding yourself that what you're genuinely excited about is the outcome in that instance, which is like, well, if I do Instacart once a week, then I can put that money towards my debt and I'm going to feel so amazing when my debt is paid off, and that sort of thing.
I feel like that's like the benefit of being, or like getting yourself to that point where, or like I guess that's like the dream point to be at, which I'm kind of at a similar spot too, where I don't have to take on any extra work. Like I don't have to accept anything. I have taken a little step back from freelancing to be able to have more time to focus on content and the podcast. And like that's such a privileged place to be in, but that's like kind of the goal, right? Like financially, to be in a spot where you're only saying yes to new things when it's a hell yes, and when it's like something that, yeah, like lights you up or challenges you, or like you don't have to take on work for the sake of it. But I think when there's a journey to that, right? Because there was a point, I just made a video about this the other day. There was a point in my freelance journey where I took on literally every single project that was pretty much offered to me, because I wanted to build my business to a point where then I could be like, you know what, like you want to pay me thousands of dollars a month, but like that doesn't really excite me. So no, like that's the goal of where you want to be. You know what I mean? And it took me a couple of years to get there with like my freelance business, but that's like the goal, right? Because then also your to-do list becomes way more exciting, and it's easier, I guess, not easier, but it's just different to, it gives you more freedom and more choice on how you choose to navigate that to-do list and how you choose to move through your projects and things you're working on, and in terms of like the productivity side of things.
Yeah, definitely. The last thing we had here that we wanted to touch on like sort of the mindset piece around doing more and like managing your time better and being more productive to do more, is sort of the idea of, if you're sitting there being like, well, I don't want to take on more and I don't want to like start this thing because it's too hard, or like it's hard. I heard this quote that said, stress doesn't come from doing too much, it comes from doing too little of the things that you love. And I think that that's a really good way to kind of like shape this entire conversation of like, if you're sitting here saying that you don't want to pick up the side hustle, start the business, start whatever you're like being called to do, but you're like, I'm going to be too stressed, or I'm already stressed, kind of thinking about it this way and being like, let me just try and see if it makes the stress worse or if it makes the stress better. Because sometimes, even though you're adding something to your plate, if you're adding something to your plate that does feel really aligned to you, it could take a lot of that stress away in the long or in the short run, but in the long run especially. So just kind of like remembering that like the things that do feel aligned, even if they feel challenging, they're not going to feel hard, is kind of like a good way to think about it.
Yeah, 100%. You want to get in some of the like actionable tips to be kind of, okay.
Yes.
We like listed out basically a bunch of our, like actionable tips and things that we do that really help us with productivity and time management. And I think one of the big things for me was realizing that managing the cognitive load is so much of it. Like when I first started freelancing, I was working insane. I was working like 70 hours a week between freelancing and my side hustle that I had doing Instacart at the time, so that I could like pay my bills and whatnot as I was building a business. And that made for just like, I had to use those 40 hours really strategically and make sure I was getting things done. And I struggled with finding a system that allowed me to manage the number of tasks I had. And it was kind of funny looking back. It's like horrible. I used to write everything on a sticky note. Like I'd be like a Monday, I'd be like, okay, Monday to-do list, write on a sticky note. And then Tuesday I would write a new one. And the thing is that inevitably some tasks you don't finish on Monday, or you give yourself this like overly ambitious to-do list, and then you don't cross everything off. And then it got so hectic trying to manage too. Like, okay, a client asks me on Monday, to do some task for them and I'm going to do it Thursday. Well, I don't have my sticky note for Thursday yet, like right now. Or then now I've got a sticky note. Okay, well, next Thursday, make sure I do this. And it just was so like, it was not good. But I realized that having like a like source of truth, like one document where like I keep track of all of it, helped me manage the cognitive load because when there's just a million pieces moving at the same time, it's not even that those things are hard or they're going to take you a long time or that the list is that long. It's just that there's so many like different things happening or things you're trying to keep track of that it becomes a lot. It kind of catastrophizes inside of your brain. So I use Notion to like write everything down and keep track of everything. And that helps me a lot with the cognitive load. But I think what's important with this is knowing how your own brain works. Like some people really like doing time blocking and like blocking on their calendar, like, okay, 12 to 1, I'm gonna work on this, and 1 to 2, I'm gonna work on that, and whatever. That I hated. It was way too rigid for me, is what I learned from that. You have to know like how your brain works and what makes sense to you. Some people love like a physical planner and writing out their to-do lists there. So like find a system that works for you
Mm-hmm.
and implement it. And it might not feel 100% at first, but like pick something, try it for like a few weeks to a month and see if it works. Because once you get through that cognitive load, like hump, and it's like, okay, I don't have to worry about like managing all these different things people are asking me to do because every time someone asks me to do something or every time I think of a task, I go put it in Notion. That helps so much with like the
Mm-hmm.
clarity of like, okay, this is actually a lot easier to manage now.
Yeah, no, definitely. And that's sort of one of those things where like we can't tell you what the best like time management
Right.
practice is. Like we can't tell you that like this to-do list and like writing it in a physical planner as opposed to doing a digital planner is like the end all be all like best way to do it. Like it's definitely what works for you. I've tried the sticky notes, the planners, the
Mhm.
like I've tried every single thing. And like I'm not going to sit here and say that I have like the best like 6 months from now I'll probably use a different system, you know what I mean? Like it's sort of what works for you in the like phase of your life and in your like career journey that you're in, and then as like more gets put onto your plate, maybe you outgrow your system and you find a new system. So yeah, just kind of like finding what works best for you. I will say like for me, time blocking really does help me. I don't do it every single day, but I did it for a while, almost every single day, and I think that it helped me kind of like conceptualize better how much time things actually take, because I was definitely finding this was especially true when I was balancing my corporate job and then I was also working at the startup part-time and then I was also doing the content stuff. So I did have like a lot going on during this time. It was probably like my busiest phase of life since college. And I think like I was getting to a point where I would wake up in the morning and I would have a to-do list of like 16 things. And like then I would just sit there and spend so much time staring at my to-do list, being overwhelmed that I wasted so much time. So time blocking, I had like a little daily, I still have it. I don't use it every single day. I use like the weekly planner more, but I had a daily planner in my Notion planner. And I would sit there and be like, okay, from 9 to 10, that is 60 minutes. Like what are the 2 to 3 things that I can realistically get done in those 30 minutes? And then like from 10 to 12, I was going to focus on this thing. And then like from 12 to 1, I was going to focus on this thing. And it really helped me. Like after doing that for a couple of months, it was like, okay, in that 1 hour time period, I thought I was going to be able to get like this UGC video done, but it actually took me 2 hours. So now the next time I factor that into a time blocking day, I know that that's going to take me 2 hours because I can like conceptualize it better. And then it helps you kind of like not be so disappointed in yourself when you get to the end of the day and that 16 item to-do list you didn't get done because that was like not realistic for you at all.
I did something similar, which helped me a lot when I first started managing like all my freelance tasks and content creation and everything. And I found that the like time blocking was a little bit too rigid for my brain. Like because I would have this like, okay, I'm gonna write this for an hour, do this for 2 hours, like whatever. But then I'd have a client who would message me and be like, hey, like, do you have a quick second to like hop on a call, or can you like do this quick task for me, or can we update the copy on this post? And I'd be kind of pulled in different
Mm-hmm.
directions, and then I would get like halfway through my time block that I had set for like writing a blog that I was writing for a client, and I'm like, well, I'm not even halfway through this because I got pulled to something else or whatever. So what I started doing, and what was an absolute game changer for me and has helped a lot of people because I've mentioned it in like comments and things on my videos, but what I would do was in Notion, I just have like a to-do list. You can do this in like really any document that you want, but it's very similar to like the time blocking situation. But I would list out all of the tasks, and if you're familiar with Notion, I do it as like a checkbox. And so I would write like just it's a simple document like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, whatever. And then under each one, I have like a checkbox for each thing. And then I'd have the task. And then in parentheses next to the task, I write how long I think that task is going to take me. So over time, you start to figure out, okay, like writing a blog takes about 2 hours. Doing this UGC video is going to take about an hour, or whatever it is. Like you kind of know. And then that helped me a lot to visualize, okay, these 3 tasks are going to take me 8 hours, but this other batch of 5 tasks is going to take me 3 hours, because sometimes that's just like how it is. So then I could divide things up to make sure that each day was roughly 8 hours of work. And then also, what was helpful for me was to be able to visualize, like to see how much time it would take me. Let's say I like finish a task early. Say I think it's gonna take me 2 hours, but it takes me an hour and a half. Now I have an extra 30 minutes. If I'm still in like a productive mode, I'm like, okay, cool. Like, let me check something else off. What on my to-do list for this whole week? Is there anything that's 30 minutes that I could just knock out right now? And so often there really would be. And also, I would find that a lot of, because sometimes I think there just becomes like a cognitive overload where you have, let's say you have 16 tasks on your list or whatever, and there's maybe like 5 of them are going to take you 10 minutes each or something, but it's like just the fact there's so many, seeing all these little like lingering tasks that would take 10 minutes, I'd be like, oh, like this meeting with a client just ended early, let me just go get that 10-minute thing off my list. And if you're like a type A person like me, there is no better feeling in the world than checking something off your to-do list, like being able to cross it out and be like, ooh, it's done. Like that is the most satisfying thing. And that's why I set it up as a checkbox in Notion, because when you check it off,
Yeah,
it crosses it
up
out
the entire
and
thing.
it makes it gray. Yeah. Like that really helps me though to visualize my day. And also I started to figure out like what's my most productive hours of the day. And for me, it's the morning. So when I've kind of stepped back a little bit from blog writing. I do mostly ghostwriting now, but blog writing, I need every single one of my brain cells when I'm doing blog writing, because they're like these long form pieces and doing a lot of research and everything. So I knew they would take me 2 to 3 hours each. I would make sure that I start my day with that. So let's say I have 3 blogs I need to write. I'm like, okay, well, 3 of the days this week, between Monday and Friday, 3 of them, a blog needs to be on each of those days, because I couldn't write more than one in a day. Like it's too much on the brain. So I would know, okay, I need to space these tasks out. It would be very unrealistic for me to think I'm going to be able to get these all done in one day. Even though that might fit time wise, quote unquote, it's not going to fit like mental wise. And that was really helpful. And now I know how long everything's going to take me. So when I'm like making my to-do list for the week, I'm able to divide it up and be like, okay, this is going to be roughly 6 to 8 hours a day without having to note the time next to it. But that was the most helpful thing. And also it's helpful to see like what's taking me the most time versus what do I actually enjoy the most? What is it paying me? It's good to like have that data to look back onto when you're making decisions about where you want to take your business.
Yeah, I do have a rule that if something's going to take me I say under 5 minutes, but it really is under 10 minutes, like do it right now. Don't even add it to the to-do list. And I think this was like a huge game changer for me, because I get very overwhelmed and overloaded when there's like a million things on my to-do list and they're all just kind of like miscellaneous or admin related things. If it's an admin related thing that like will take me a significant amount of time, like an hour to 2 hours, I have like a monthly admin day at the end of every month, and I go and sit down for like 3 to 4 hours and like just knock out all of my bookkeeping, like all of the shit that I hate doing. I put to that one day so that I don't have to think about it throughout the month. But if I have an admin or like a miscellaneous thing or like an email or something that if I put it on my to-do list, I know it's going to stress me out having it on my to-do list, I just knock it right out. And I think that helps. I think with the time blocking thing for me, it holds me very accountable for doing the things that I say that I'm going to do. So let's say that I have a meeting from 11 to 12 and I said from 10 to 11, I was going to do 3 things. Most of the time, the things that you put on your to-do list, it takes more time and energy stressing about how you don't want to do the thing than it does to actually just get the thing done. Like for example, filming like a UGC video or something does it take creative energy? Yes, you have to show up on camera, you have to talk to the camera, you have to like whatever. Actually doing it like does not take that much time or energy. So if I put it on my calendar from 10 to 11 and I know I have 20 minutes before a meeting, I have to get started on it right now, like because I'm holding myself accountable for doing the things that I say that I'm going to do. But if I just write out like a 10 item to-do lists, and having that UGC video on there is one of them, then those 20 minutes before the meeting, I probably wouldn't feel the urgency to actually get the item crossed off of the list because I didn't say that I was going to do it right in that time and be like, oh, well, I'm going to get off that meeting at 12 and I'll just do it at that point.
Yeah, I feel like it really depends on like what motivates you and what like again what works for you and your brain. I think on the topic too of having tasks that you really like don't want to do. Like bookkeeping is the real one that I can't, and it's not even hard. Like it's not hard. It's just like I just don't like doing it. It's so annoying. But like one thing that I has helped me a lot in managing all of the different things that I need to do, because it isn't just about like it's not just about like providing the actual service to the freelance client for me. It's like all of the email communication that goes on, Slack, sending Slack messages with them, fielding their their responses and their messages and getting back to them. And then it's like with content creation, it's not just about like posting a video. It's like filming that content, mapping it out, scripting it, editing it, responding to all the emails, like negotiating with brands, creating brand, like there's so much that goes into it. And then all the admin stuff of the bookkeeping, the invoicing, the just all of it. There is a lot of tasks. But for me, one thing that has helped is finding more efficient ways to do the things that you don't want to do. Like there are simply just going to be things, especially in business and career, that like you don't want to do. I don't want to do my bookkeeping. I don't, but I also don't want to pay someone $500 a month to do it for me. That feels like a waste to me because it quite literally will take me 20 minutes a month. Like it's really not, it's just, I don't want to do it, but find more efficient ways to do it. So like, for example, when I first started, like first got a bookkeeping software, QuickBooks was recommended to me. And QuickBooks is great, right? There's nothing wrong with it, but I found that it was a bit more, it's a very robust software. So I went with a software called Xero, which is a little bit less robust, but I personally find it easier to use. Like the way it's set up, just like it like scratches an itch in my brain. So it's actually way easier to use. Or like with Notion, like I have to make my to-do list every week. I have to script my videos out. I have to do whatever. Like that's part of it. And I get to do those things, right? Like I'm very grateful for where my business is at. I'm not saying it's like, oh, I have to like make my to-do list to work my self-employed job. No, like, you know what I mean? But I feel like,
yeah, but you have to hold yourself accountable for doing all of those things.
Because, and you have to show up and do them. But by using Notion and using something that works really well, that works for me. Or like I have to go through my inbox and like clean all my emails to make sure that I'm responding to the emails that are important. Well, like a way I can make that a lot more efficient is like I put like I set up a labeling system in my email. So if I read an email and like it's like a brand I'm not going to want to partner with, or like a spam thing or whatever, I mark it as not partnering with. So if that brand follows up with me, I'm not having to like read through the whole chain again. I'm like, I already know this is something I don't want to do. Or I can see at a glance which brands I'm waiting for payment for. So I'm not like, oh shoot, now I need to like go through every single email and see like, you know what it is. Like you develop systems that allow you to do the things you don't want to do more efficiently. And even like life stuff, like if you want to have more time to focus on career and business, what are some life things that you can like be more efficient about? Like let's say you're like, I want to exercise every day, but you also really want to prioritize like learning more about like the side hustle you want to get into or something. Can you like listen to the audiobook while you're at the gym and like stack them together maybe? Or
I do this all the time.
Yeah,
like
I do it all the
YouTube
time
videos,
too. Yeah.
yeah.
Or like let's say, for example, let's say you like own a home and mowing your lawn, like you have a big lawn or whatever. Can you pay like a teenager to come and like mow your lawn so that you can just like have that hour back every week to be able to like work on whatever you want? Or like for me, I always try to like do my laundry while I'm doing something else, or cleaning while I'm doing something else. When I edit the podcast episodes, I'll play it while I'm cleaning. And then like if I hear that we make a mistake or something and I want to edit, I like stop cleaning and I go and I like edit that little thing, and then I like go back to cleaning and I listen to it. And that is really helpful. Like don't necessarily feel like you have to find the most efficient way to get through the things that you want to do or the fastest way to get through those things. Figure out what you don't want to do and try to make those more efficient. So then you're spending less time on that and you can get more done on the things you actually want to do.
Yeah, definitely. And it can be anything from as simple as, again, like cleaning while you're listening to a podcast, or like editing videos while you're on like on the treadmill at the gym. Like it could be as simple as that, up to like getting very good at setting up automations in your business. Or we won't even touch on really like outsourcing, because I feel like we could do an entire separate episode on like practical ways to outsource different things, because I know that's something that Grace and I are like actively working on right now, as well as like learning how to outsource, learning how to effectively delegate, learning how to like set up all of those systems. But I feel like even with automations, like I'm not a techie person at I am not a techie person like in the slightest, right? And I don't inherently know like what in my business and like what in all of the things that I'm doing I can automate, but there's so many YouTube videos. Like if let's say you work like in marketing or something and you type in automations for like marketing jobs into YouTube, like I'm sure there are so many things in your business that take more time to set up on the front end but save you so much time in the long run. And I think that's why a lot of people don't automate stuff, and definitely why like I haven't taken the time to automate stuff because no, exactly. We all could, but it like definitely can help you save so much time in the long run because you're setting all of those up.
Yeah, and you can like ask yourself, like, which this is kind of what I started to do a little bit last year, asking myself, what things am I doing repeatedly? Like, what things am I doing over and over? Because that's usually a sign that you could create a better system for it or automate it. And what things am I spending the most time on? And what does that process look like? So, like, yeah, writing blogs for clients was very time consuming. What like parts, like, what's my process for going through that? And are there any aspects of it that I could make more efficient for myself? And also, like, we live in a world with AI, and I'm not saying like I don't use AI to write blogs for clients, but for example, if I was like stuck on like, you know, for example, like writing an intro, I don't know what it is, but writing an intro to a blog was always like, oh, like, because I feel like a lot of people, you kind of like, they do the same thing every time in the intros. And so I would like use AI, I would write an intro and then I'd use AI and be like, can you like give me this intro in like 5 different ways? And then that would usually like spark my brain to be like, I'm going to say this instead. And so instead of me sitting there staring at the page being like, all right, I don't know how I want to word this, like I would use AI to jog my brain to get me to like think of it in a different way. And I think that is helpful and that makes it a lot more efficient. But if things you're doing repeatedly or things you're spending a lot of time on are usually things you could develop better systems around. But kind of going back to what I was saying too about like editing the podcast while I'm like doing something in the background or listening to an audiobook while being at the gym or whatever. Another like thing that helps me with productivity and just general time management is stacking things together as much as possible. And I'm a big multitasker, and I know some people are more of like a do one thing at a time. I've never been that way. I literally like sometimes I'm like, I went and got ADHD testing years ago, and sometimes I'm like, do I have it? It came back negative. They were like, no, you don't. But sometimes I'm like, I feel like I do because I can't do one thing at a time. I need to have like 2 things happening at once, like all the time. I genuinely function best when that's what's happening, even if it's just like me doing something, but then there's like music playing. Like there needs to be like 2 like stimuli. I can't just like do one thing. But I love multitasking for that reason. But also it helps with time. Like I want to get at least 1 hour of movement in every single day. So on a day when like I know I'm going to have a busier day and I'm probably not going to get to go outside and go for just like an hour long walk where like after work, I will just like use my walking pad underneath my little standing desk and I'll walk while I'm working. Or like yeah, always like listening to podcasts or audiobooks while I'm walking, or like maybe if you're driving to a full-time job, like you like listen to an audiobook or a podcast in the car. Or if you're like, you know what, one of my goals just in life in general is to call my mom more. Maybe like every Friday on your drive to work, you call your mom, or you do it like while you're cooking dinner, or you know what I mean? Like stacking it with other things so that you're able to get more done is like really, really helpful to me.
Yeah, I definitely like will do the multitasking stuff in terms of like habit stacking, like kind of what you said. I really do like to use my like driving, exercising time as my sort of like continued education. Like that's really how I learned about personal finance, was like I used to drive a lot for my first job out of college. I would drive like 5 to 10 hours a week, and I would listen to a ton of money podcasts on my drive. So I think like in that aspect I definitely do it. But I think on the flip side of that, I think half of what I consider productivity and like just again what works for my brain is really limiting the feeling of my brain being pulled in multiple different directions, because I think a lot of people struggle with this. And I know I definitely have days and used to have a lot more days when I was, you know, like working my corporate job and doing like the startup part-time, doing content, like all of those things. We were starting the podcast at that time. I was always just feeling like when I was working on project A, I was feeling guilty for not working on project B. And when I was working on project B, I was feeling guilty for not working on project A. And I feel like a lot of people think like that. You know what I mean? You can't like sit down and kind of like decompartmentalize like and be like, okay, I am giving like project A my undivided attention for the next 4 hours, and kind of just like finding ways to navigate that. Like again, it's sort of like a working system. Like you just need to find what works best for you. But I've definitely found like the time blocking has really helped me. Even I know this works for some people, and it obviously depends what you're doing. If you are doing like a corporate job plus a side hustle, like some of these tactics aren't going to work for you. But for entrepreneurs that maybe feel like they have like a bunch of different little projects here and there, day blocking. So like Monday, I try to make my entire content day. And that's the day that I know that I need to make sure that I have like my hair and my makeup done, and my apartment needs to be clean because it's so much easier to film when my apartment is clean. I know that like on Sunday, I need to script everything out so that like it doesn't take me a lot of time to film all of my videos. Like, how can I really optimize that one day? And since I optimize that one day for all of my content, that frees up so much time Tuesday through Friday to work on the different projects that I have going on. And that might mean that Tuesday I can literally lounge around in sweatpants and my hair can be in a bun because I got all of that done on Monday and I don't. So really just figuring out like what's the optimal, like even day by day schedule for you, because that really limits the like going back and forth between projects. And there's like so much downtime when you're kind of bouncing back and forth from things.
Yeah, I used to do that with my freelance clients where I'd be like, this day is going to be like for this client, and I'm going to like get their entire content calendar figured out when I did social media management. But it like ended up not working for me because a lot of my stuff I have to do like a little bit each day, kind of like.
Yeah, when
so
you're doing
it
social, you have to like
depends.
schedule stuff out.
It
And
like depends on the type of work that you do. But I think that having like my business coach a couple of years ago, she told me to kind of have like a CEO day or whatever, like once a month or once a week. And she would do it once a week, I think. And that was one thing that I tried to implement this year. So like I try to do like summer Fridays is what I'm calling them, where I take every Friday off to just like either go do something that's like not work related or whatever, which is productive. Rest is productive. But also sometimes I'll use it to just have like, okay, I'll tell my clients like I'm not in on Fridays. And so then I just like can sit down and just like get a lot of the admin stuff, like especially with like I just launched a course like a month ago or whatever, and like focusing on like getting the funnels up and doing like admin work on the back end or doing the bookkeeping stuff that I don't want to do, like just getting that done like undivided is really nice. The other like tip that I have on here that I wanted to mention is something that also my business coach taught me a couple years ago. And one thing she used to always say to us was focus on the revenue generating tasks. But I expanded this and I say focus on the revenue and joy generating tasks, because the thing about the revenue generating tasks, like her point that she would always make to us is that sometimes you'll look at a to-do list or you'll think about all the things you need to do, especially when it pertains to business. And you're like, well, I need to make a website and I need to make an Instagram account and I need to make a LinkedIn account and I need to do this, this, and this. And she would be like, what is the revenue generating task? She'd be like, you don't need a LinkedIn account to go and like sell your product, or like, thinking about, it depends on obviously the type of business that you have, but like, one of the women in the program was a travel agent, and like, I mean, she was amazing. Like she was such a good travel agent, but like for her, what's a revenue generating task for her is going to be very different than me. When I was in that program, I was just doing like, I was full-time freelancer. So really focusing, like look at your list and be like, what is a revenue generating task? What is actually moving my business forward? Because what you'll find is that a lot of it just isn't. For example, let's say the travel agent did go make a LinkedIn. Are people on LinkedIn really searching for travel agents there? No, it's going to be way better off for her to focus on her Instagram. However, for me, creating a LinkedIn made way more sense than creating an Instagram, because my freelance clients are on LinkedIn. They're looking for talent on LinkedIn. And that would be a revenue generating task. Sometimes we feel like we have to do all of the things, but then we end up wasting time. Like me making an Instagram account to market my freelance services would have been a waste of time. And like viewing it through the lens of like, what is revenue generating? What's going to move my business forward is really good. And then also what's generating joy? Like, do I actually enjoy that task? And again, there's going to be things that like you just have to get done, like the bookkeeping, and bookkeeping does not bring me any joy at all. Like, but I mean, I guess it does, because I kind of like seeing the numbers. I'm like, ooh, okay, like it's a good month, But I feel like focusing on the things that move the needle forward and that bring you joy, because when you think about it, like, I mean, at least for me, the reason I started a business is I want to do work that I enjoy, and I want to like do work that I actually want to show up for. And I want to make money.
Yeah.
So like I want to prioritize things that bring me joy and bring me money.
Yeah, I reframed my to-do list to, instead of having like the mega to-do list, I do my today's top 3 is what I call it. And I always try to make my, like, what are the 3 value add things that I can do to actually move the needle forward, because those are the things that are going to generate the revenue, are going to propel, again, my business forward. And then like the rest of the things, if you get them done, that's great. You can have them in like a lingering to-do list. I think that's literally what you call
I do.
is like a lingering to-do list. But yeah, you can have like your revenue generating, needle moving tasks as your, like, these are the 3 things that I'm going to do today. And the rest is kind of like, if I have additional time. I will say too, and I know we're running out of time, so we're going to kind of like wrap up here, but weekend work, I think, especially if you're starting a new project as like an entrepreneur, or whether you are like doing a new project in on the side of your like corporate job or something like that, or if you're in college and you're a full-time student, starting a new project can be a big mental roadblock, because it's probably not making you money yet because you're just starting it. So your brain kind of thinks of it as a hobby. So I know for me, whenever I'm starting a new project that isn't currently monetized, any time that I spend on that project during the week, my brain automatically routes as like not wasted time, but like time spent on, I kind of use it as a hobby, like not as actual work, because it's not currently monetized, which is such a bad way to look at it. But I know for me, any time that I have on the weekends that I'm like, I have a free Saturday, I don't want to do anything today other than like literally sit on my computer and work on this project, because this project genuinely brings me joy. It's not bringing me revenue now, but it brings me joy. And it kind of like, it counts as like an extra day in my brain. So I actually find that weekend work is super productive to me, and it doesn't feel like work, because if I'm starting the project, that means that it's something that I am excited about.
Yeah. The other framework too that I forgot to mention that I want to mention is that is the way you can assess like whether it's a task you want to focus on, or like if you're trying to kind of, I think of like tasks when you're like as like triaging them. I'm like, this is like, if it's like an emergency room, which one are you going to start with? Because sometimes you see so many of them, and then you're like I have so many things to do. And one way that I like triage is thinking about the least effort in versus the most value out. And this is something I learned from one of my freelance clients a couple years ago, when they would want to do like a growth experiment. So they're like, oh, we're going to try a different marketing thing or add a new feature to the product. They would meet as a team and they would rate different aspects of that new feature or marketing task or whatever on different like different categories. So they'd be like, okay, how much effort is it going to take us to actually put this new feature out, to try it, and like how much of an impact is that going to have, right? Like changing the color of a button, like, is it going to make that big of a deal? No. If it's going to be a big thing that's going to take us a lot of time, it's probably not worth it. It's not worth it for us to focus on that at this time. But if there's something that you're like, okay, well, this is probably not going to take me that much effort actually, or I'm going to enjoy it and it's going to have a big impact, start there. Like, because that's like, it's going to take a little bit of time and create a big impact. And then from there, psychologically, that makes you want to do more, because you're like, okay, well, now it's going to snowball. Versus if you're doing a task that's going to take you so long and make no impact, it's kind of like, eh. And again, this isn't about like the stuff that you have to do, like you got to do your bookkeeping, whatever, but the other stuff, especially when you're starting a business, there's going to be things that you're like, this is going to be time consuming and it's really not going to make that much of a difference. Like, is it something you should be focusing on? Like, focus on the things that are going to take a little bit of time and make the most impact. Like, start there and then it will kind of snowball.
Yeah, I love that so much. And I feel like we could do so many more episodes on time management, productivity, kind of like the mindset around like starting something new, because I know like that is such a roadblock for so many people. So if you have any more questions on this topic or anything else you want us to cover in a future episode, please leave it in Spotify or DM us on Instagram at The Life You Love Podcast. We love hearing from you guys. But I think that brings us to the end of today's episode. We hope you guys enjoyed, and thank you for tuning in.